So this is where we're at. The big October surprise. Is this what we've got him up? Oh, come on, please. You can't be serious with less than 2 weeks to go. Social media starts buzzing late last night with this story out of The Atlantic. Jeffrey Goldberg is the author's name, and they are back to calling Donald Trump Hitler. The guy who was just working the McDonald's drive-thru, who was handing out Big Macs and chicken nuggies, and was working the fry maker, making sure that it never touches the human hand.
Tight. We got the salt on it. Never touches the human hand.
Yep.
Nice and full.
Nice and full. That guy is now Hitler 2.0. Here's the headline from The Atlantic last night. Trump, I need the kind of generals that Hitler had. And this is all tied to the death of a veteran from when he was in office 40 years ago. And Trump allegedly saying in a private conversation, I need the kind of generals that Hitler had. According to two people who heard him say this. He adds, quote, people who are totally loyal to him, that follow orders. Of course, the campaign and many people who have gone on the record have denied this. But this feels so lame. It feels like that Hail Mary, except here's the thing. The Hail Mary is being attempted from 80 yards down the field. And nobody can throw the football, not even Patrick Mahomes, 80 yards down the field. In a best-case scenario, you have a catch at the 20-yard line, and then you got to lateral it to somebody else who then has to run into the corner of the end zone and score as time expires. That's what we're dealing with here. You've been sitting on this story for how many years from 2020? And now you sit here and you say to yourself, yes, here we go, let's drop it. If it was that valuable, they would have done it weeks ago. Early voting's been underway in some key swing states for quite a while now. And then there's also this part of the story in The Atlantic that dropped late last night. And it's not a real October surprise, but it feels like it's all they've got. And it's tied to the death. I won't get into the weeds on it because it's irrelevant, but it's tied into the death of a member, someone who has served this country. And there was a bill that was received while Donald Trump was in the White House for $60,000 for a funeral bill. So Trump apparently says, did they bill us for the funeral? What did it cost? Well, the funeral cost $60,000. Donald Trump became angry. It doesn't cost $60,000 to bury a bleeping Mexican. That's apparently what Donald Trump said. He then said, don't pay the bill. He said, can you believe it? People trying to rip me off. Well, why would that magically appear in this Atlantic piece? I have no idea what was said, by the way. But why would that just magically appear in this Atlantic piece? And then that is the clip that's getting used and the quote that's getting used out of the article by people like Ana Navarro and others in legacy media who are trying to desperately help Kamala Harris get elected. Well, number one, Donald Trump continues to grow his share of the Latino vote. Joe Biden won it by 20-some-odd points 4 years ago. There is recent polling that shows Donald Trump neck and neck with Kamala Harris with the Latino vote. So if they can have Trump in some quote by some anonymous person disparaging someone of Latino descent, well, they're going to do it right now because they appear incredibly desperate. The polling of folks that they expect to break their way are not breaking their way, at least based on polling and early turnout results and what parties are showing up and who's showing up and what party they affiliate with. All those things are not breaking in their direction. So they're putting out stories like this from The Atlantic, and then all the people in the media are going to talk about the story in The Atlantic because nobody actually reads The Atlantic, so they have to amplify it somehow, and they will amplify it through different media outlets. That's what's likely to happen today on this front. But it feels like a big nothing burger. They tried the Trump-Hitler thing 8 years ago. Think about it. Donald Trump's in a position right now where the betting markets have him favored to win the election. And yes, that says a lot about Kamala Harris and her boss, Joe Biden. But it also says a lot about how people are at the point where these things they are trying to stick to Donald Trump just aren't working. And that's because they don't understand the mindset of people that go and vote for Donald Trump. People are not going to vote for Donald Trump, in many cases for a third time, because they think he's the greatest guy or that he handled himself great after he lost in 2020 and he does a great job on social media and he's never out of line and he's always buttoned up. It's like, no, that's not why people are doing it. They're doing it, well, first off, because in an election, you are choosing between oftentimes lesser of two evils. You are dealing with immoral individuals. Nobody has put Donald Trump on the moral high horse. Nobody should put Donald Trump on the moral high horse. But what you can do and what you should be able to do is acknowledge that the man ran the country awfully effectively. And what you saw when he was in office, especially before the pandemic hit, the once-in-a-century pandemic that nobody could have predicted, is a country that was seeing growth, economically speaking, that had relative peace and prosperity around the world, certainly far more than we've had the last 3 years. And they say, for all the nonsense, I kind of want to go back to that. And when the polling shows people do not feel better off than they did 40 years ago, well, once again, people are going to say, yeah, okay, it's not really about the guy anymore. It's not. Yeah, in a perfect world, we'd have this incredibly moral individual who had a little more, shall we say, ability to tone it down at times than Donald Trump does. But guess what? That option doesn't exist. So you can scream Hitler all you want, but the vast majority of people who are voting for Donald Trump right now, we're voting back in 2016. We're voting back in 2020. And amazingly, he wasn't Hitler. But you can keep trying. You can keep going back to the tired playbook and let us know how it works come the morning of November 6th. I don't know what's going to happen in less than 2 weeks. I have no unearthly idea. And anyone who tells you they do doesn't. You can look at trends. You can look at polling. We can wonder if the polling is off one way or the other. Had they overcorrected on Donald Trump polling? I don't know. Nobody does. But I do know this much. As we sit here this morning at 6:13 on a Wednesday, they are not throwing Donald Trump as Hitler against the wall if Kamala Harris is in a really good place, with media outlets like The Atlantic trying to do some of that dirty work. They're just not doing it this late in the process when early voting has already been well underway. If they thought this was the big October surprise, that was going to sink Donald Trump. 913-408-7957. Now, back here in the Kansas City area, a reporter was shot by a U.S. Senate candidate. I kid you not. I am not making this up. Thankfully, everybody's okay, so we can have a chuckle at this. But yes, a local U.S. Senate candidate, shot a reporter. We'll get you the details and the bizarre story next on 95.7 FM KCMO. Did you guys plan that little Bongino bump back music with Bongino's voice over the top? Oh, man, yeah. Let's go. 6:19 on a Wednesday morning on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. We also have some breaking news that you'll like here in Kansas City coming up in just a minute. Hit piece last night dropping from The Atlantic, calling Donald Trump Hitler. He wishes he had the generals that Hitler had. Yes, that's where we are at in this campaign with 13 days left to go. Bill's in Overland Park. Bill, good morning. You're on KCMO.
Good morning, Pete. Hey, I just want to let you and all the readers know that there was a Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic that wrote an article, I think 5 years ago, when claimed that Trump said all the soldiers that died in World War II were suckers.
Suckers and losers. Yes,
had,
that is
20 people.
That is the same Jeffrey Goldberg from September of 2020. Americans who died in war are losers and suckers. Same one. And they still use that line all these years later.
Oh, exactly. and people who weren't even Trump fans said it was not true.
Yeah. Yep. No, this guy, he's a real shining star in the world of journalism, Bill. He's a rock star, man. I
Amazing.
say that very much tongue-in-cheek.
Oh, it's amazing.
It is, but it shows where they're at. These are new levels of desperation, Bill.
Exactly.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate you. 913-408-7957. I'm glad he had that little anecdote there as well, because I forgot about it, and then I was like, oh, yeah, connect the dots. He's right. He's absolutely right. Same guy that put that out there. And then, of course, you have, as some of you are noting on the text line, the soldier's sister refuting the Atlantic story late last night, early this morning. So do with this what you want, but if this is their big October surprise with 13 days to go, first off, it's not that impressive. We've gone down this road a million times, and if it was that powerful, well, guess what? They would have done it a month ago before the early voting started in some of the key swing states. Breaking news here in the last couple of minutes. Here we go. Ian Rappaport having this information here. NFL Network insider. The Kansas City Chiefs are trading with the Tennessee Titans for wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. Picked up steam in the last 24 hours. The Chiefs are sending a fifth-rounder to Tennessee that can get up to a fourth-rounder. The deal is being finalized. We know the Chiefs need a lot of help at that wide receiver spot. They're down Rashee Rice. They're down Hollywood Brown. And they're trying to make this work, make that unit come together. And this feels like a steal to me, Mark. I don't know about you and your immediate reaction to this news.
Oh, yeah, a fifth rounder would be great. And even better if it's a fourth rounder, because that means he's playing well. And
yes.
He's on the field doing good stuff for us. So, yeah, I really like this move.
Yeah, now, he is a veteran. He's been around the block. He's in his 12th season in the NFL. He's 32 years old. I can't believe he's been around that long.
Yeah, we were maybe looking for a move like this way earlier. Maybe even before Hollywood Brown at one time, the rumors and talking about who was available at the time. Mm-hmm. Actually, before he even went to Tennessee, I suppose, was when that came up.
Yeah. So this guy, he has had incredible seasons. What's he doing this year? DeAndre Hopkins this season, 15 catches, 173 yards. He's not having a good year.
It's up to the QB. No, he's caught what's thrown to him.
That is fair. Tennessee doesn't have a quarterback.
Yep.
They are a bad team this year, so it's not on him. You look at his numbers here. Even last year, he had a 1,000-yard season. So, and when he was at his peak a few years back, guy was an absolute stud. 1,500 yards, his best year back in 2018 with the Texans. And that's, of course, when the Chiefs beat him in that crazy 24-0 comeback game. So he's a stud, and the Chiefs desperately need help at wide receiver. So everyone happy in there? We're good? Everyone's good?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, Mark's fired. He's got his Chiefs hat on. It's like you knew what was coming today, Mark.
It's Raiders week.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. So DeAndre Hopkins is coming to the Kansas City Chiefs in a big trade just announced here in the last few minutes. Okay, now let me get to this next story here that I just teased before the break. And this is the kind of stuff you can't make up. Josh Hawley is running against a guy named Lucas Kunce. Lucas Kunce ran for U.S. Senate 2 years ago as a Democrat. He lost in a primary to Trudy Bush Valentine, a Bush heiress who bought the primary right out of the feet from Lucas Kunce. So now Kunce gets his shot 2 years later. He's running against Josh Hawley. Kunce is at an event in Holt, Missouri. And what happened yesterday is they were firing off what they call AR-15 style weapons. And he's there with a couple of other folks, so I'll get to momentarily. And as he's firing this weapon, a Woke 41 reporter gets struck. Now, we don't know if he was hit by a bullet ricochet or another type of metal fragment, but Lucas Kunce, while he's firing a gun, ends up hitting a Woke 41 reporter, who, thank goodness, is okay. The reporter's name is Ryan Gamboa. Kunce was among those who provided treatment to Gamboa, wrapping a bandage around his arm. And if you haven't seen the photo, it's up on my X page at Pete Mundo from yesterday because you can't make this stuff up. Gamboa went to be checked out at a nearby hospital after the incident. Said his injuries were minor and he was released from the hospital. So Lucas Kunce is there showing off his shooting ability. And who is he there with? This is where it gets good. This is the cherry on top for this story. He's there with Adam Kinzinger. Oh, the ultimate case of TDS, former Illinois congressman who now goes around the country and talks orange man bad to try to help Democrats get elected, and he calls himself a Republican. Like, he's entitled to that belief, right? He can vote for and lobby for whoever he wants, but he's kind of become the male version of Liz Cheney. Or maybe he's the chick version of Liz Cheney. I don't know. One or the other. And Liz Cheney's the male version of Adam Kinzinger. However you want to split those hairs, whatever you want to do, I don't care. But that might be the better way to put it. So Adam Kinzinger's in Holt, Missouri, up the road here, with Lucas Kunce, and they end up accidentally shooting a reporter. My goodness, you can't make this up. We are officially in the silly season of this campaign, John.
Just heard that Dick Cheney's going as Lucas Kunce for Halloween this year. So.
Oh, that's brilliant. And it does certainly feel that way. Now, we're glad the reporter's okay, but when you look at the picture of Lucas Kunce putting a bandage on this guy's arm, and I sit there and I say to myself, my gosh.
I thought it was an ad.
Yeah.
I was scrolling by and go, was this a Band-Aid ad?
No, it's not a Band-Aid ad. It's a reporter getting...
It's staged. It's a photo op.
Treated by Lucas Kunce. And, oh, man, the media is just losing its mind over it, and it just makes me laugh. Because they don't know what to do, right? They're like, oh, we don't like Josh Hawley. But this guy Kunce is accidentally shooting reporters in the arm because he's trying to prove he's a gun guy. Oh, brother. Now, Kunce spent 13 years in the Marines, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm Rambo by any stretch of the imagination. But I don't think it makes a lot of sense. They're shooting little, looks like metal cans, and it looked like they were way too close to be shooting metal cans like that with a weapon of that size. And if something off of their targets ricocheted and hit the reporter, then I don't think you need to spend 13 years in the Marines to realize that's probably not a great idea. But man, you can tell we are in the final 2 weeks of an election when stories like this are coming out. 913-408-7957. Speaking of local media, we got to share this endorsement, this doozy from somebody we'll get to next. Kansas City Star endorsements keep coming in. Yeah, I know you've all been waiting on the edge of your seat for the latest Kansas City Star endorsement. You just can't contain your excitement. You don't know what to do on some of these key issues and key races, and you just sit there with bated breath and you say, Kansas City Star, please tell me what to do.
I'm not worth your Red Lobster money.
Oh, come on. I know. That's why you buy that subscription, right? You run to the end of your driveway this morning and you pick up that newspaper from the Kansas City Star and you say, endorsements, give me a good endorsement. Come on, Star, let's go. Well, they put out another one here this week. And this is in regards to Proposition A, is what they're calling it. Prop A. Prop A is a deal that is really about minimum wage and earning paid sick time off in the state of Missouri. So this is one of the many things that Missourians will be going to the polls and voting on here. You can have all these different amendments, sports betting, abortion, and we'll talk more about some of those amendments on the ballot at 7:20 this morning. That is what we are doing throughout the entire week here on KCMO at 7:20 each and every day. We are going to highlight one of these amendments that is on the ballot. So that's what we're doing at 7:20. But now you've got this Prop A. And what Prop A does is it would raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and it would also require many businesses and employers to provide paid sick leave. So I know it's going to shock you that the Kansas City Star came out and gave that a big thumbs up. They endorsed it. Now, I look at it and I say to myself, okay, well, if part of the pitch here is that 450 businesses across Missouri have pledged their support on Prop A, I say to myself, well, why don't those businesses just start offering $15 an hour and paid sick leave? In fact, think about it this way. If there are hundreds or thousands of businesses in Missouri who are offering less than $15 an hour, and that is allowing these other businesses to get better employees because they're offering $15 an hour and they're offering earned paid sick time off, then they have an advantage when it comes to hiring in the marketplace. Why would they want to give up that advantage? If you raise the floor, then suddenly if you're offering 15 and earn paid sick time off, how do you get an advantage? You got to offer 17, 18, 19, 20, whatever it might be. Suddenly your advantage is gone. So when I saw this in the Kansas City Star, it was written by Bill Thompson, special of the Star, and he talks about how it would help working families gradually raise the minimum wage, earn paid sick leave up to 5 days at smaller employers. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, any business can do whatever they want on that front right now, right? And if you have even the most minimal of skill sets, you can find yourself a job where you're going to easily make $15 an hour and you'll get some paid sick time off as well. You will get that, trust me. So why is this something then that needs to be put in as state law? And I would be curious, especially when you look at some of the more rural parts of Missouri, right? I guarantee you that most jobs in the Kansas City area right now are at least $15 an hour. I'd be curious to know where you're getting less than $15 an hour, unless, of course, you're like a server at a really good restaurant where the bulk of your income is going to be off tips. But you go to more rural parts of Missouri, and it's a different cost of living. There are going to be mom and pop businesses that can't afford $15 an hour, that can't justify $15 an hour. So that's where a one-size-fits-all approach just simply doesn't make sense. It's not about the Kansas City area or the St. Louis area or even Columbia or Springfield, but you go to much more rural parts of this state, and first off, you have businesses who can't afford it, and frankly, they don't need to pay that to hire people. So why would you force them to? And then I thought about this in the context of some of the national conversations that have been out there for how long now? How long have guys like Bernie Sanders been fighting for $15 an hour? Oh, it's been years, right? Come on, Pete, $15 an hour, let's go. That's the Bernie Sanders bro out there who's like, we've got to get up to $15 an hour. No questions asked. Well, Bernie Sanders put this up yesterday on X. Quote, yesterday, Donald Trump did 15 minutes of work at McDonald's where tens of thousands of employees earn starvation wages. But when asked whether we need to raise the $7.25 minimum wage, he refused to comment. I will comment, writes Bernie Sanders. We need to raise the federal minimum wage to $17 an hour. He's up to 17.
Inflation, Pete. Adjusted for it.
Well, that's the irony of the whole thing. This guy was recently demanding $15 an hour, right? And now, thanks to the government devaluing the dollar through its spending, Bernie is up to $17 an hour. It really is infuriating, but more than that, it's just hilarious at how clueless these individuals are on just economics 101. And I'm in the place right now where I prefer laughing at the absurdity and the stupidity of the whole thing because it's just ridiculous. You find me anybody who is making $7.25 an hour, and I will show you the ultimate sucker. There is nobody in their right mind who is making $7.25 an hour because there's no business who can hire anybody at $7.25 an hour. A legitimate private business right now today cannot offer anybody $7.25 an hour and expect to hire them. Please, I would beg Bernie Sanders to find me that business that is hiring somebody at $7.25 an hour and finding that employee. There's no way. The real minimum wage, someone should tell Bernie Sanders, is $0 an hour. That's the reality. These businesses that will continue to automate if they can for places like McDonald's, instead of giving people an opportunity to get back into or start their careers in the labor force, they'll figure out ways to automate because in the end, the marketplace is never wrong. Heck, there's a McDonald's down by me, 119th Street. I think 2 people work in there. You walk in, you punch the buttons on the screen, and then some guy or gal shows up and hands you your food. That's it. They are automating right now. So Bernie Sanders continues to advocate for people to lose jobs and the government to be more involved in your life instead of saying, gosh, you can get great work experience. You can learn a skill set. You can learn how to have a job by being at a place like McDonald's. Instead, Bernie just wants you to not have a job so he can take care of you and then go buy a 4th house, John.
Doing that nanny state thing.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, back here in Missouri, in Jackson County, specifically Kansas City, we're struggling to keep the businesses open and not broken into that pay the minimum wage.
Yeah.
Right? You got to have a place that can hire you and go to work to first.
Yep, absolutely. You do. And right now, that's got to be the major thing that's being looked at. How do we help businesses grow so they can hire more people at better rates, whether it's in Missouri or anywhere else? And as some of you have noted on the text line, when it comes to minimum wage, Kansas City did pass its own deal, right? Well, it looks like right now, the current minimum wage in Kansas City, Missouri is $12.30 an hour. That's increased over the last few years. And that is the same as the state minimum wage, as I look at that here right now. So I will give credit to Woke 41. They did a piece here, and this is from yesterday at Woke 41, headline, Kansas City coffee shop owner explains how Proposition A, which is what raises the minimum wage to $15 an hour in Missouri, could hurt small businesses. They talked to the co-owner of Anchor Island Coffee on 41st and Troost. And the owner said to mandate that a business do something because it sounds good, that's not a decision that should be made. And good on this guy for speaking up, because a lot of businesses will live in fear. And they will say, well, I don't want to seem like I'm against the worker. No, small business owners need to be the ones that stand up to this and speak out and explain to people why this is bad policy. And it's not about keeping the man down. It's not about keeping the worker down. It's just about how to run a business right now when small businesses have gotten crushed by inflation the last 3.5 years. 913-408-7957. So if you're a small business owner or a small business worker on the Missouri side of the state line, I do want to hear from you on this at 913-408-7957. Prop A on the ballot, raising that minimum wage in Missouri to $15 an hour plus paid sick time off across the board. There are downsides to this, and they're not getting nearly enough attention. Pete Mundo at 644 on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. It's 6:50, and I do want to hear from small business owners as we wrap up the first hour here on KCMO Talk Radio, because this Proposition A deal that's on the ballot in Missouri, which will raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2026. After that, minimum wage would automatically adjust based on consumer price index to keep up with inflation. And then also it would require earned sick time off. So those things are on the ballot in Missouri, Prop A. And of course, you're getting all the usual folks endorsing it. A lot of the liberal media people are endorsing it here. I think, and I don't want to speak to the Chamber of Commerce, but what you're seeing are hundreds of businesses come out in favor of it. And frankly, that's because it helps big business over small business. Big business will benefit from this. Small business will not. Big business can say, yeah, sure, because what it does is they're already doing a lot of this stuff, right? So they're doing this stuff already. But this just also helps hurt their competition. So that's why they would be in favor of this as well. And they make this one-size-fits-all approach where also you will hurt more of the rural economies in the state where they don't need to pay $15 an hour for work. And that continues to drive people to metropolitan areas and to cities. It hurts rural America, in this case, rural Missouri, in a big way. And also that works out well for the politicians because rural America doesn't vote the way they want them to anyway. Let's go to Kevin. He's on KCMO. Kevin, good morning. What's happening?
Hey, Pete. I'm a small business owner myself, and capitalism does work as far as dictating what the wages need to be for a particular job in a particular area anywhere in this country, for one. And then the other thing I mentioned to John was right now, I have an auto parts store that I order parts for my business that they can't get drivers. They're offering $15 an hour. They're having to resort to DoorDash to get parts delivered to me even. So jobs are out there.
So these guys who have auto parts shops where they deliver the auto parts to your shop, right? So that's what you're talking about.
Correct. And it's a big corporation. It's a franchise store.
So would that be like the O'Reillys and AutoZones of the world?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they have drivers that then drop off things that shops like you need to fix cars, and they can't find drivers at $15 an hour.
Correct.
What's their theory as to why they can't find people?
I don't know. Most of the time it is, I'll say guys that are at retirement age and they're doing it as a part-time gig, just kind of supplement whatever income they have as well, whether through retirement or Social Security. But they just can't find help. They can't.
Did it used to be like pre-COVID? Was it younger guys or was it always kind of retirement age folks who were just looking for supplemental income?
It was definitely a mixture pre-COVID.
Because that feels like a perfect job for like a young guy who wants to get involved in the business. Seems like a great job for him.
Oh yeah.
How about you? Are you keeping your guys on the mechanic side?
Oh yeah. I what I pay them per hour, it's really dictated by the industry. And, it's like, okay, if you have X amount of skill, X amount of experience, X amount of certifications, it's going to really dictate. There's other small businesses like me that we're all good, the owners, we're all good friends, and we compare notes as far as, okay, what are you paying your guys? What are you offering your guys? So that I don't want to be behind or where I'm not offering enough or whatever to be able to retain my help.
So now you've got you've got DoorDash drivers who are dropping off Big Macs and then alternators.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
That's unbelievable. Thank you very much for that, Kevin. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
How about
no
that?
Problem.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Your food's going to be a little cold because I got to stop by Kevin's shop and, drop off some spark plugs.
Off a distributor.
Yeah. Jason's in Kansas City. Hey, Jason, you're on KCMO. Good morning.
Morning, Pete. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. What's happening?
I was just telling John here earlier, I run a building materials distribution center in Kansas City, and we're starting Class B drivers at 26 to 28, and I can't find one.
26 to 28 an hour, and you can't find anybody.
That's correct.
What do you think's going on?
And it's the only thing that could be going on. There's just more jobs out there. And then what we do, a lot of the jobs pay nearly the same, and it's a lot less physical work. That's our issue.
Other jobs in your industry or just other jobs in general?
In general.
So because there's obviously some labor involved, you think people are just staying away from those gigs?
100%. I've even had people take a couple of dollars less because they just show up and have somebody sign a piece of paper, and there's no physical labor involved.
So you're saying people are taking jobs for less than what you're offering, 26, 28 an hour, just because it's less work?
From what I have heard personally, yes.
Wow. And so this has not gotten better in the wake of like all the COVID stuff kind of winding down?
Not at all.
But was it okay? Could you find people pre-COVID? Was it okay like while Trump was in office?
It was starting to get harder.
Yeah.
You could definitely see the trend beginning, but it wasn't as hard as it is now. But it was definitely starting, yeah.
Wow. Jeez, man, that is just crazy. So what do? Are you going to have to go up to 30 an hour, or are you just trying to make do with what you got?
Probably a combination of the two.
Unbelievable. So remind me again. You're looking for Class B drivers and 26 to 28 an hour.
That's correct.
Wow, man, and that's just to get in the door, right? Like you'll get raises over time.
Yes, they will.
Unreal. Wow, Jason, thank you for that.
Absolutely, thank you.
Appreciate it. I mean, that's first off, it's case in point right there about why this whole minimum wage conversation is ridiculous. It's like, we got to help the working man. Well, the working man can go work for Jason and make $26 to $28 an hour right out of the gates. So if you're going to sit there and talk about starvation wages like Bernie Sanders does, these businesses are trying to starve their employees. Jason can't find someone for $28 an hour. Stop. The marketplace isn't wrong. Now, some will use this and say this is why we need immigration, and we do need immigration. We're not having kids. More people are on the government dole. All those things are absolutely true, but you've got to do it in a way that's orderly. You know who's coming in, and you make sure people want to work, not just get, some kind of a government handout type of a deal, because that doesn't benefit anybody, except for, of course, the politicians. Now we've got people on the text line saying that they want to go work for Jason. I don't know how to get a hold of Jason, but I'm sure you can find him online. Coming up on KCMO Talk Radio, why is this the story that keeps on giving? McDonald's next. We're now on day 4 of this ridiculous Donald Trump works at a McDonald's story, and it just keeps on giving. They can't help themselves. It's 7:05. Good morning. Happy Hump Day Wednesday. Thanks for starting your day with us on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. A quick note, if you missed it, if you're just turning us on and waking up this morning, the Kansas City Chiefs have made a trade for DeAndre Hopkins with the Tennessee Titans. 5th-round pick is going to Tennessee. The Chiefs get some help at wide receiver, which they desperately need. So that is a huge deal. And the Chiefs are moving on with a wide receiver after Rashee Rice goes down. And then also, of course, Hollywood Brown went down before the season. So they need help at that position. They got it. DeAndre Hopkins is a big-time wide receiver, having a bad year for a bad team, but he can certainly rejuvenate himself here with the Chiefs. So that trade expected to be finalized. Ian Rappaport making that news here in the last hour. So now to Mickey D's. That's right.
Tight.
Human end.
You got the salt on it. Never touches the human hand.
Never touches
Nice
the
and
human
full.
hand.
Thank
Nice
you.
and full. That's right. Oh, yes. Nice and full. So with that, the New York Times and the media continues to give Donald Trump a win on this story. Here's what the New York Times wrote yesterday. Headline: Trump took a turn at the fryer. McDonald's workers have some thoughts. So now this political stunt, and that's all it was, turns into day 4 of a news story because the New York Times writes an article where they went around to McDonald's workers and asked them to analyze Donald Trump's ability to work the fryer. You can't make it up. Oh, my goodness. This is so good, John.
Isn't it rich? Are we on day 4 of looking into whether Kamala ever worked?
No.
Here's the thing. They went and tried to find it.
Yeah.
Right?
They can't, though.
There isn't anything.
So now we're just going to keep attacking Trump over
Yeah.
ridiculous
Day
stuff.
4.
All right. This is great. New York Times writes here, for a veteran of reality TV, he committed what appeared to be a number of health code violations. Several workers said, Mr. Trump did not opt for a hairnet or gloves. As he filled a box of fries cautiously, he quipped that the food never touched the human hand. They spelt it wrong. It's human hand with a Y. Mr. Trump asked a worker, supposing we want some extra salt, can I do it like that? Without waiting for an answer, he added several vigorous shakes over a fresh batch of fries. Then he tossed a handful of salt over his left shoulder because he said he's superstitious. That did not go over well with some of the half dozen workers who watched the video. Keisha, a McDonald's manager in Flatbush, Brooklyn, told the New York Times, "You don't throw salt like that. Somebody could have been behind him. Oh, the horror. Oh.
How dare you?
Oh, someone could have been behind him." They added here, when Trump threw the salt over his shoulder in a nod to superstition, it was a second-long gesture that would have most likely been unappreciated by efficiency-loving managers had Mr. Trump been any other employee. Oh, my goodness gracious. They are now criticizing Donald Trump for throwing salt over his shoulder in a staged political moment in a McDonald's in Western Pennsylvania.
Well, I find it funnier to think McDonald's has efficiency standards based on the ones I run into in Grandview.
Oh, my goodness. They add here, a cashier at a McDonald's in Astoria, Queens, said the campaign stopped minimizing the hard work that she and her colleagues put into the job. No, nobody was mocking the job. If anything, they were mocking the fact that there is still no evidence that Kamala Harris has worked at a McDonald's. And you know as well as I do, if that evidence existed today, the Kamala Harris campaign could own Donald Trump right now by sharing a photo, sharing some work records, sharing a pay stub of her time at this McDonald's. They could kill this news cycle and own Donald Trump on the back end by saying, for all your goofiness sitting in an apron, here you go. They haven't done it. And their friends in media haven't done any digging on it. So instead, what the New York Times does is they put out an article yesterday interviewing McDonald's workers who are now analyzing Donald Trump's ability to work the drive-thru like this is Tom Brady on the Fox NFL broadcast analyzing Patrick Mahomes against the 49ers. This is beyond absurd. The media is making a complete horse's butt of itself, but that's also very much on brand for what they do on a regular basis. And this is part of what we talked to Guy Benson about yesterday. He's our new afternoon host on KCMO 95.7 FM, 3 to 5 every day. He's part of the Fox News family. He is doing a great job. If you have not listened to Guy on your way home, it's worth listening to. That way you can stop listening to Cat Gets Stuck in Tree or other boomer humor or whatever it is on the other station that is just total junk, total nonsense. Here was Guy breaking this down yesterday when he joined us on KCMO.
Here's what they should have done. On the Democratic side, not that I'm in the business of giving them a bunch of advice, but just look at the pictures, look at the images and say, you know what? That's a win for Trump. Tip your cap. Say it was smart of them to do that. They're trolling our candidate. They seem to have a lot of fun doing it, and they're having a good moment. Let's not extend the moment by talking about it. Let's just get it. Let's get past this as quickly as possible. Like sometimes in politics, the other side makes a good move, and you can just sort of be like, you know what? Fair enough. Let's get back to the stuff we want to talk about. Instead, this is now a 3-day story because you have people on the left and the Democratic Party and, Tim Walz and AOC and other people going off about this. You've got the news media clutching their pearls about it, and people saying, well, it was staged. This was a photo op. Like, of course it was staged. Of course it was a photo op. It's how campaigns work. You all do it.
That was Guy Benson yesterday on KCMO. And if you haven't listened, he's on today, 3 o'clock on 95.7 FM. Mark's in Independence. What's up, Mark?
Hey, first of all, on this Kamala where she works story, when I got ready to retire, Social Security sends you a letter with your work history. So I'm sure they have access to that, and they could, quote unquote, leak it like all the other little Democrat government agencies do.
Well, there is some, I will say this, though, there is some speculation it may have been while she was in Canada, so it might not be on that rundown, but I do see your point.
Yes. And then secondly, I'd rather throw salt over my shoulder than jam my new shotgun.
Yeah, a little ode to old Tiananmen Tim Walz there. All right, Mark, nice job. On the text line, 913-408-7957. Pete, I worked at Fryside in high school with a steakhouse. Everybody knows you sprinkle salt on the ground to get traction in the greasy area on the floor. Okay, right. You learn something new every day. That's outstanding. It just is the gift and the story that keeps on giving. And the best thing that the New York Times and the Harris campaign can do is just stop talking about it. Like, guys, stop talking about it. Do yourself a favor here and just give it up. Move on. Redefine the news cycle with what you want it to be with all your friends in media. You've given this now 4 days of life, and it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Yesterday, we covered the story that nobody else in Kansas City media cared to or chose to cover, and it was a Facebook post from Missouri Senate Floor Leader Cindy O'Laughlin, who says her 2 sons live here in Kansas City, and that over the weekend, one of them was out at the Fall Festival at Power and Light. Streets are blocked off, entertainment for the families and things like that. And out of nowhere, a bunch of 40 teenagers show up. They start turning over tables, tearing down tents, throwing bricks. And she's like, no one covered this. I put it up yesterday on social media. It got tens of thousands of views and shares. And a lot of you saw it on X, put it up on Facebook as well. And we talked extensively about this, how this is obviously, unfortunately, too common, too frequent in Kansas City, and also how local media did nothing with this story, which also is par for the course. But I got an email from a listener, name is Chad, and he heard this story yesterday, and he sent me this email that he said I could share with the audience. And the email says, Pete, I was listening to your show this morning regarding the unreported crimes in and around the Power and Light District. And it hit home for me, as our family recently experienced a traumatic situation as a result of the out-of-control crime in this city. Chad writes here, my 19-year-old son went to a concert at T-Mobile Center on October 5th. And shortly after midnight, October 6th, he walked down the corner of Truman and Grand to see if he could catch a glimpse of the band loading out. About that time, 2 dirt bikes heading southbound on Grand Boulevard pulled up on either side of an SUV and started firing shots into the vehicle. My son was struck by one of their bullets in the inner thigh. Luckily, the band staff pulled my son behind cover and saved his life. They put a tourniquet on his leg and saved his life. The below link is the only media coverage I found, and it barely explained what really happened. It's sad that the public doesn't hear these stories of crime in these areas and allow us to make better informed decisions as to whether or not to patronize the area. And the article that he shared here was from KCTV5, published on October 7th. And it just says here, a rider of a dirt bike was left dead early Sunday morning after reportedly hitting a light pole in the crossroads. Shots were also fired nearby on Truman and Grand at 1:30 a.m., sending one person to the hospital. Police are investigating, but witnesses say the 2 incidents are related. Police say the rider was speeding near the intersection of 22nd and Grand, just across the street from Western Auto Lofts. And then they talked to a couple of witnesses, heard gunshots outside their apartment complex, came out. They saw a motorcyclist firing shots at an SUV. They say they even spotted bullets lying in the street. What they don't say is that you've got this listener whose 19-year-old son was also nearly killed in this incident and could have lost his life. So these are the stories that are not getting covered, that are not getting reported on. And oftentimes, like many of the situations in other entertainment districts in and around Kansas City, the business owners, sad to say, don't want you to know about them. And that's true in Westport. That's true on the Plaza. And I believe that to be true in Power and Light. What makes it even more concerning and more of an issue for Power and Light is the fact that the entire district is subsidized by you, the taxpayer. So that's why it's not just the business owners who have skin in the game. It's also the city who has been subsidizing the entertainment district for years, basically since its inception. They've got to get people down there for big events, concerts, shows, Big 12 tournament, all those different things. And if stories like this start coming out in any kind of excess, well, that's going to drive many of you away. and understandably so. I've got 3 little kids. Am I going to bring them down to a place where there's going to be a bunch of hooligans flipping over tents and throwing bricks? Am I going to subject a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 7-month-old to that? Even if there's a 1 in 100 chance that it happens, why am I going to bother if I can go somewhere else, spend my family's time and money, and there's a 1 in 1,000 chance that ends up happening? What are you going to do? It's just common sense. And it's stories like this that unfortunately are far too frequent and don't get the attention. Now, we're happy to tell the stories. I mean, we don't want to do that. And we're not doing it to make the city look bad. I mean, none of us want to see that. It's home for all of us. But I also don't want to see a situation where these things get buried and then people in charge can hide behind the fact of, well, we didn't know that happened, or don't talk too loud about this, John, or the next thing. Please don't.
If you see something, say something.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're here for you.
Right. Not whistling past the graveyard.
No, we are not going to be doing that.
Got the World Cup coming. You got to clean this up.
Well, that's exactly right. But hey, new streetcar. Woo! Don't worry. You hop on the streetcar. That way you can get a free ride away from the gunfire. Unbelievable. Next on KCMO, just after 8 o'clock. What is going to be used if Donald Trump wins, and he wins because of a voter block that many people are going to be shocked by? I'll explain it next.